great insights and pearls of wisdom that John provided, and our next speaker is going to do the same. Jill Klosterman. With over 15 years in commercial real estate, finance, and management with emphasis on affordable housing, Jill is now the Executive Director of Eagle County Housing Authority, leading the acquisition, development, and management of affordable housing projects within the county. She is also Board Chair of Housing Colorado and Treasurer of Colorado Mountain Housing Coalition. And she's going to share her experience on leading the affordable housing efforts on behalf of Eagle County. And we do have something in common. She has gone from the private sector into the sector of trying to make things happen using the background of the private sector and making things happen. So Jill, it's great to have you. Thank you very much.
So I did not prepare a PowerPoint. You've got a handout on your table, but before I get to that, I want to just briefly talk about this beautiful place we live. And I've got 2 small kids and a husband who is a rafter. So we spend some time down here, but I forget in driving down 321 this morning, just looking around thinking, gosh, you guys are really lucky to live here. And we've all got our problems, but it sort of reminded me of, I think, probably a 1990s Broadway musical, I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change. And I think that's why Reed asked me here to talk about some of the, if you're not willing to change, you're stuck behind, or whatever that saying is. So I thank you all for being open to some change. And without, my topic of how to form a housing authority is a little less exciting than all of John's pictures. So I did intend to have this be an informal discussion. Reed told me you guys have a lot of questions, and that was one of the reasons I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. So please feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, stop me if I'm going too fast, kind of wave me on if you're bored. But what you have in front of you on one side is just kind of a very high-level outline of how housing authorities exist in the state of Colorado, how they're formed. If any of you know any attorneys or have seen their stacks of Colorado revised statutes, you need Chapter 20 or Title 29. That's the good one where all this stuff is found. But the state statute does allow for 3 different types of housing authorities: a city housing authority, a county housing authority, and a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. So we'll talk a little bit about each one. And I can't remember how Dan introduced me, but I have 2 titles. I'm the housing director for Eagle County government, and I also serve as the executive director of the Eagle County Housing and Development Authority. And we'll get into a little bit about why that is, and why it confuses people or complicates my signature line or something. But establishing housing authorities, at least from a city and county housing authority, is a relatively easy process. You have to petition. You have to have a resident petition go to the city clerk or the county clerk. I can't remember how many signatures you need, but it's not a huge amount. So the formation process, relatively easy. It's how those organizations work that becomes more complicated. One of the things that we in Eagle County wrestled with this fall, we did have a ballot initiative on the November ballot. It would have been making me all sad here. When John says they're fortunate in Summit County to have an electorate that is willing to tax itself, I don't think he realizes just how fortunate they are. Our ballot initiative did not pass. We're trying to figure out why that is. Certainly there is a need. There is lots of discussion, in the local papers and coffee shops and everywhere else about how hard it is for folks to find housing. but that did not translate to yes votes. One of the things that a county housing authority cannot do is levy taxes. A multi-jurisdictional housing authority can do that, and that's what Summit did. So a county housing authority cannot levy taxes, a county can. So this was a county tax initiative, different from Summit counties, which was the Summit Combined Housing Authority that levied those taxes, put that initiative on the ballot. Did that matter to the voters? We don't know yet, but that's a question that I'm really curious about. One side of the aisle says, well, people don't know how government operates. They don't care if it's county or housing authority. Another side, and you can guess which one I'm on, is that voters are smarter than that. They do understand, and they may have a feeling that the county gets enough taxes, and that this was an important policy priority, that they could funnel some of the tax money that they already get into the housing programs. I don't know if that's going to do some follow-up on the post-election follow-up. I don't know if people will say that or not, but that's one of the things that I'm somewhat concerned about. The third type of housing authority is multi-jurisdictional housing authority. So this is an agency, a separate body, corporate and politic, separate entity from its members, but it's simply truly formed by two or more cities, towns, counties, municipalities that get together and say they want to form a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. That body does, as I said, have the ability to levy taxes. It also has the ability to set its own boundaries. So on the bottom part of your handout there, I just have outlined, some of the communities in Eagle County. This is not deeply researched by me. This is folks that I know and have asked these types of questions. So, don't hold me to any of this, but I think it's all accurate, but I didn't call every one of these executive directors to talk through these points I put here, which is why I call them observations and not facts. But I think they're factual. So, an interesting thing in Robb County, which is Steamboat, they have a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, and they've set their boundaries, not countywide, but they've set their boundaries at the Steamboat Springs Rural Fire Protection District. So why did they do that? A couple reasons. That's where they perceive the big housing problems to be. That's where their homes are most expensive. It's essentially Steamboat and the closely surrounding areas, leaving out some of their farther out, less expensive communities. So they really feel that that's where the need is. They also think if they ever put a ballot measure on, the only folks that vote on that are the folks within the boundaries of their multi-jurisdictional housing authority. So they feel they would have a better likelihood of getting a funding source from folks that live in the communities that are less affordable to live in. So that's sort of an interesting, setting your own boundaries maybe sounds really boring and that you don't need to put a lot of thought into it. It's a county, of course, but I think there are very strategic ways you need to think about if you move forward with a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. You really want to think about how those boundaries are set, and the reasons behind that, I think, are really important. If anyone has any questions about simply formation, I'd be happy to have them now. Otherwise, I'm going to walk you through a few examples of what some other communities are doing, and then we'll kind of dive into Eagle County.
Do you have to have voter approval for that multi-jurisdictional?
You do not have to have voter approval to form the authority. You do have to have voter approval to levy the tax. Yeah, and that's, John referred to 2006 was the first time the Summit County voters, and I believe Summit County's boundary is the entire county. So they had the voters voted for that. They voted again in 2015 to extend the sunset, and in 2016 to increase the dollar amount for 7 years for a specific project, 10 years. Okay. So very, very, I think one of the reasons the 2015 and 16 measures were so successful are the pictures and the stories that John just told. They've done, Summit County and its municipalities have done great things with the money the taxpayers have entrusted them with. They've done great things.
I just want to give kudos to the newspaper because the Summit County newspaper was very helpful in bringing this whole housing issue on the front page. We had coverage every Thursday morning for 9 weeks, all about how tricky housing is and this and that, and it was totally the facts, but everybody in the community reads that paper. And sometimes they only read the front page. Sometimes they only read the headline. But that's what we got, and that helped us tremendously.
Yes. Everybody reads the Vail Daily in Eagle County as well, and we got a negative endorsement from the newspaper. I don't know if that's a reason, but in defense, there were our school district had a really big mill levy and property tax increase on the ballot also. Both of those passed, so that was a really good thing. And then we also have a part of Eagle County is sort of, if you look at a map, sure, it belongs in Eagle County, but if you've got to drive there, which I do this afternoon, over to Basalt, it's sort of disconnected. They had a bunch of tax measures on their, local measures on their ballot too, so could have been that it was just too many things at once.
You mentioned that steamboats,
District boundaries?
Boundaries, yes. They don't have any little pockets outside.
I don't think so. I think it's truly where they're, let me read it so I get it right. Steamboat Springs Rural Fire Protection District. I don't know exactly where that goes.
Well, what I'm thinking of is, we have Poncho and Salida, and we have lots of ranches.
Is there a model that anybody has where they have the little pockets?
Yeah,
Hills in between.
I don't know. That's a great question. Yampa Valley Housing Authority is the only group that I've talked to that has specifically said we purposefully set our boundaries to be smaller than the municipalities that are members. Most of the other are really the entire county, most of the other multi-jurisdictional housing authorities. But the statute is very clear that you can set your boundaries. Let me see. It may include less than the entire area of the separate governmental entities. It also can be modified after you established it. So if that's the direction I'm disappointed that I can't stick around for the working groups this afternoon because I think it'll be really interesting to hear what the feedback is. But if folks say, we need multi-jurisdictional housing authority, you can start working on the formation of that. You can start getting some of those governmental entities to agree to form this. Without necessarily saying, I want that parcel of land, but not that parcel. You can be creative in how you set that. Right, so I will move on to some of the specific examples throughout Colorado. What time do you want me to stop? Okay, 5 minutes. We'll do this quickly then. So Eagle County. So I mentioned that I am a county employee. Most of the work that my department does is done through the housing authority. And that's for, we've got a pretty conservative county attorney. Things like down payment assistance loans, the county used to do that. But really the county, his interpretation is the county the county government should not be making real estate loans. It doesn't fit into the statute or the list of things that county government should do. So we do that lending through the housing authority. Now, county staff sort of work on that, but it's a housing authority activity. Most of the kind of development, pseudo-development work that we do is done through the housing authority. So it's, it's separate entities. We have, to back up a step, The Board of County Commissioners serves ex officio as the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority. But when we as the Housing Authority bring them a project, they change hats. So that, we're now the Board of the Housing Authority, no longer the Board of Eagle County Government. There's positives and negatives to that. I think there is a feeling that we should involve a broader band of decision makers. And I think what will happen, and this was part of the lead up to the ballot initiative, was a committee, an advisory committee, which has worked really well in other areas. Open space, county tax in Eagle County, really led by an advisory committee. Our transit authority, county staff, county tax, led by an advisory committee. So I suspect that one of the things that will happen in 2017 in Eagle County is that we really form hopefully a strong and dedicated advisory committee to lead our housing efforts. Because, my first question after I'll call it a hangover, but it wasn't from drinking, on November 9th was, what next? Do we fold up shop? Because we could do that. Or do we sort of carry on realizing that for whatever reason our message didn't get out there, but affordable housing is still an issue. The Board of County Commissioners leans very much to that side, that we just didn't do a good job with this ballot initiative. So one of the things that I'm really proud of, even without that advisory committee, is that my staff, we run a nonprofit real estate firm. So we do a lot of restricted resales. Very small market. We sell maybe 30-ish units a year. We charge 2% both sides, which helps to keep the fees low to the homeowners. But we have been able to establish agreements with every other municipality to essentially manage their deed-restricted program. So now when somebody wants to buy a home, they call us and we say, okay, go look at the market. Look at the market. Don't just assume you can't afford. You have to have a deed-restricted unit. Encourage them to go find everybody's got a friend that's a realtor or a friend of a friend. Go talk to them, look at units, and then come back and talk to us as well. But they no longer have to call the town of Eagle, and the town of Eagle, and the town of Vale, and Eagle County. They can call one place, which I think, and this is new. We signed with the town of Vale, I think in May of 2016, and in October we signed with the town of Avon, and that'll be effective January 1st of 2017. So while we're not a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, we're sort of acting like one in many ways. A couple other highlights, Summit County, and I was able to see the newspaper article this morning. They have been talking about their combined housing authority, their multi-jurisdictional housing authority. Is it working? They had a big meeting yesterday, and it sounds like the meeting said, yeah, let's keep it in place. We have to tweak some things, but it's working. And if you guys know more than that, please feel free, but that's what the paper said. So the message there is maybe there's not a perfect solution. Every one of these agencies has its sort of pros and cons. Want to talk also about La Plata County. So La Plata County has a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, the Regional Housing Alliance of La Plata County. They also have a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, and you can ask Joe Rowan if I said that correctly. Funding Partners is one too. But almost all of the work that organization does is really down payment assistance loans and other kind of funding. So they just, what do they call it? Dormant. They put their multi-jurisdictional housing authority dormant, but are being very active through their Homes Fund, which is a nonprofit, a 501c3. So another interesting thing that just recently happened. Garfield and Grand County probably look more like traditional housing authorities. They run housing choice voucher programs. They earn fees through the management of those programs. Both county housing authorities, where the Board of County Commissioners appoints commissioners of the housing authority, and then those commissioners have control. They're not advisory, they're controlling those agencies. We talked a tiny bit about deed restrictions. I'm pointing at you, but when John was up here, most deed restrictions, all of the ones in Eagle County, go away upon foreclosure. Why? Because that's the only way banks will lend on them. If they have to foreclose, they want to have those units free and clear of any encumbrances. Telluride has a deed restriction that does not go away upon foreclosure. They've been able to work with a group of local banks that will make loans on those. So really, really cool thing. Will it work everywhere? I don't know. An interesting thing about Eagle County's deed restrictions is we don't have any income caps on ours. Guess who doesn't want that? FHA. So our deed restrictions do not qualify for FHA mortgages, which is a big bummer. But it's a policy decision. We have decided we don't want to have income caps on our deed restricted units, so that when 2010 happens, and it will happen again, hopefully not in the same manner, our buyer pool is bigger. Do we see abuse of that? Very, very little. We get to know our buyers pretty well. They come in and meet with us, and there are certainly some that probably could buy on the open market, but for the most part, we've got local folks that are employed locally that are earning wages comparable to everyone else in the community, and they need some assistance. So kind of some tweaks that you can think about in your discussions this afternoon. Hickman County. So Summit County is lucky that they've got voters that will approve taxes. Aspen has a real estate transfer tax, a RET that generates millions of dollars a year that can no longer happen because of Tabor. So people keep saying, well, why don't we have a RET? Well, we have Tabor, so we can't. It's specifically not allowed in Tabor. But they're grandfathered in, so that's a pretty cool thing. The town of Dale has one too, but it's dedicated to open space. So, I think if you go in and tweak anything in your RET, it goes away. So you're sort of stuck with what you have. So I'm well past my 5 minutes. The other side really just talks specifics about what Eagle County does. I will tell you quickly that we have no taxpayer dollars. We have not received any general fund or any other dollars since 2009, I believe. Well, how do I get paid? Because I do get paid. We do the real estate sales. We also own and manage some rental properties. The biggest one, Lake Creek Village, if you've ever driven west on I-70, it's all the red roofs. That was a requirement of some developers back in the early 90s. So the county, the private developer built that and financed it through a 6320 municipal bond, which gave the county essentially the right to, or ownership rights really. We unwound that 6320 corporation back in 2012 and refinanced it with a very attractive HUD loan. So it generates some cash now.
Jill, one quick question. Do you have any idea in your workforce how much you're able to, as was stated by John's, they're serving about 50% of their workforce with attainable housing. Do you have any idea what Eagle County is doing?
Oh, I would significantly less than that. We've got probably maybe 1,200 deed restricted units. Again, all kinds of deed restrictions. Some are very light, some are very heavy. And then maybe another 1,500 rental properties. So what if with about 2,500 families, our population is 52,000. I don't know what portion of that is in the workforce. So we're maybe at 10 or 15% would be my sort of off the top guess. Anything else? So I know we didn't get into, if any, Reed's got my contact information, so if anyone has specific questions on, how we operate, I'd be happy to answer them via email or phone, and unfortunately I can't stick around because Independence Pass is closed, or that would get me over to the salt really quickly, right? In theory. Thank you so much.
Just very briefly, our second speaker in this segment, Tom Davidson from Summit County, was planning to be here and had to cancel at the last minute because he's also a county commissioner and some issues came up and he is not able to join us this morning. So he, I'm sure, would have had some great insight following up on what John had said earlier. So with that, we are ready to go to the next session, getting close to on time. And it'll be a panel discussion, so panel, please, members, please make your way up here. Stretch your legs, 5 minutes, enjoy another cup of coffee, glass of water, and we shall reconvene. Thank you so much.